Okay, hello, it's Lisa and Devin here for our Semiahmoo seaside cooking demo with Chef Devin. And I thought while we're waiting for people to jump on, and I'll adjust my crazy hair, I need a hairdresser super badly. I would just kind of show you a little bit about what social distancing actually is going to look like here at Packers, give you a little bit of a better idea what it looks like with the tables socially distanced. So normally, oh gosh, I don't even remember what we could fit 98 or 100 people in this side of the restaurant before. And I will just kind of pan around for you to see. And I'm using a new thing called a gimbal, and I'm not that technology efficient, so excuse me as I figure this out. All right, so I'll just kind of pan around so you can kind of see what a socially distanced restaurant's going to look like. Oh, wrong way. So as you can see, a lot of empty spaces. There's a table and another table. So, wrong way again. I'll get the hang of this. So not a lot of table space in a socially distanced restaurant. The tables are actually more like 12 feet apart because you have to account for a person sitting in the chair and the people sitting in the chair the next space. So they should be a little bit more than 6 feet apart when they're actually sitting in the chair. So hopefully, yes. Hi, Dana. Thank you for your comment. And yeah, we are really hoping that we'll be able to open sooner than later here at Semiahmoo Resort. So I'm just going to walk back over where Chef Devin is waiting for us, for you. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Again, I'm using a new handheld thing, and so it's a little challenging. And my hair is growing out, and I can't wait to be able to go back to my hairdresser because I don't try to color my hair. All right, so here I go, and then this is actually a little bit heavy, so I'm going to put it down a little bit and pan to Chef Devin, who is, wrong way. All right, wrong way again. Are you in it? There you go.
There we go. Welcome, everyone. As I said yesterday, we're going to do kind of a classic Kellogg recipe, and it is currant butter tarts. So pretty simple recipe, very simple, very few ingredients. I think that's one of the reasons that I gravitated towards it when I was a young cook, was that it was pretty simple, and it was always, a lot of the stuff was always in the fridge and always in the house. So a lot of my recipes, even today, I look up and I research and I find out I use what is available, what I have in the fridge. Do I need to buy more? And part of being a chef is being creative and figuring out what you have and what you can use in your own environment. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a very quick dough. It's a short dough, but it's, instead of doing the quiche dough, the brisée like we did last time, which created a nice light crumbly texture, we're using cream cheese and butter and flour. And so it's actually a really oily dough, and it bakes up very light and crumbly, but it bakes off a lot of oil when you bake it. So you'll see there'll be a little bit of a residue after the baking just because of how much oil goes into it. And again, you don't have to do very much in the pan to grease it or seal it because it pops right out, and that's really nice. And then the currant filling is basically a little bit of butter, eggs, a ton of sugar, some vanilla, and a little bit bit of apple cider vinegar, which gives it that kind of tang and that nice kind of unique flavor. And then we will separate the eggs, and that'll actually give us the opportunity to create that nice crust across the top that's very traditional. So again, I'll kind of describe a couple things and a couple ways that I do stuff that has actually evolved since the last time I've made this, and it does help and make things a lot quicker and a little bit more efficient. So we're going to start here with a very short, very quick dough, and it's some flour. It's a 1.25 cups flour, room temperature butter, room temperature cream cheese, and about 8 ounces of each. 8 ounces of butter, 8 ounces of cream cheese. Yep, that's a lot. And 1.5 cups of flour, and we're going to press all this together. If you have a dough cutter, or I mean a pastry cutter, those work really well. I just start with a fork to try to break it up a little bit, and then I'll move to my hands, and it can be a little dirty to kind of get this process started, but it's definitely well worth it. And the idea by using hands and the pastry cutter is to not work it very much. And so even though it's warm, we still don't want to work it very hard and develop any glutens to it. So we're just going to kind of push it together, and once we got it into a bit of a dough ball and it's nice and sticks together, then we're going to roll it out and cut it into 24 pieces. So I have a baking pan here, which is about 1.5 inch diameter. Actually, it's a 2-inch on top, 1.5 inch base of the cooking tart shell. So again, this one of the reasons I like this recipe is there is so much butter and there's so much in the flour and in the dough recipe, but it bakes up really nice and crisp and light, and then it just pops right out of the pan. So pretty easy. You don't have to use too much pan spray or oil or butter or anything to get it to release. And the pan that we have is actually pretty new and a nice non-stick, so it will pop right out.
So Joan Price asked if you're going to be posting the recipe, and
yeah.
Yes, we will.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we do have we'll be posting the recipe. We actually have a recipe book online on our website at semiahmoo.com that we've started to create a recipe book of all of the recipes that we're doing here on the show. So feel free to check that out. It'll be archived there, but we will also post it. All right, so here we go. We got our dough. Just barely kept together. That's the idea, is that we get it nice and combined, but I don't want to work it too much for two things. It's going to get too soft, it's going to stick to the counter, and it's also just going to start to develop gluten and get a little tough. The other thing that specifically with gluten, so even if we develop some gluten, that's not necessarily bad, but it does create a shrink and a pullback. That's the worst part. It's not the flavor or the texture. Well, the texture a little bit, because it becomes a little stringy and won't crumble quite as well. So I'm going to cut this into 24 little pieces, and then we're just going to press it right in that pan.
So it's sticking a little bit to the counter. So would you that's
yeah.
just okay?
Yeah, that's just this kind of dough. It's really soft. Again, I'm going to press it into this form. We're not going to roll it. It's, if I rolled it out like pie dough or like the quiche dough, and that's because those doughs don't work as well just being pressed. This is a really very strong, very forgiving dough, and it'll press right into that really nicely. So I cut them out into eighths. And then I'll go back and cut them into thirds.
So you don't want to overwork it, is that correct? Is
Exactly.
that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Don't handle it too much.
Yeah, and so that's why it's still kind of doughy, and I'm kind of just pressing it on the counter here a little bit. So we're going to start with...
So my family always has butter tarts at Christmas time. So I always just associate butter tarts with Christmas. But when I had my bakery up in South Surrey, we sold butter tarts all the time, and they were a lot of fun to make as well as to sell.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, they're pretty easy. It's the dough, like you saw, is just 3 ingredients. It goes together really easily, and then the filling is also quite easy. You'll see. So I'm going to just press, as an example, in here.
So
one little.
Joan is asking, Chef, do you prefer stainless bowls versus glass?
We do in the kitchen just because we can't drop them. At home, I'll definitely use, I also have a lot of stainless bowls at home, but with stainless, I do what I can to avoid, other than like what I'm going to do here, which is whip the egg whites. I try to avoid too much contact with metal on metal. That metal to metal will, you know, a metal spoon or anything else will give a little bit of flavor. So glass is best. In the kitchen, in professional kitchens, we use metal because we can't drop them. They're heavy. We use several hundred a day. But I do prefer glass. Glass would be a lot more preferred at home. Again, you won't get any kind of flavor residue or anything that will come from, say, beating an egg with a metal whisk or anything. So if you take a look down here, we have pressed,
Oops.
or I'll bring it up.
I know I can do it. I just can't figure out which way to turn. It's like looking at yourself in the mirror and trying to.
So I just lightly here pressed the dough right into the round. So I'm gonna do the same thing again. Again, I just cut it into 24 pieces, 24 little tart shells here, and then just lightly press that dough right in there. So.
I'm gonna stop playing with the.
All right, so now we're going to, if you want to follow me over here, we're going to start on the filling. So I've got the shell, the crust started. So we're going to move over here. If you want to follow me. Wash my hands first, so nothing exciting to see yet. And we're going to put together our filling. And the filling is, again, we'll post the recipes online, but it is currants, brown sugar, quite a bit of brown sugar, some vinegar, some vanilla, softened room temperature butter, and then we'll use some of our good friends at Misty Meadows organic eggs. So for the egg portion, this is something that I figured out a little while ago, was to separate the eggs and separate the eggs. So separate the whites and the yolks, and then that way, what I can do is I'm going to whip the whites, and we'll fold those back into the creamed butter and sugar. So what we're going to do is we're going to cream the butter and sugar and currants, vanilla, and vinegar, just like you would cookies. And so you don't have the flour to create that, but we are gonna we're gonna mix it all together the best we can so that it has a nice kind of creamy texture. It'll, again, you'll know, and I'll show you, you'll know when it's ready because the actual color of it will lighten from it. It's something kind of dark to much, much lighter color.
So Joan asked if we need to spray or butter the pans before we put the dough in.
It depends on the pan. So if you take a look at the pan that I have, it's practically brand new, and we don't really need to do that. You will, like when you bake these off, there will be a lot of grease that comes out, and it'll self-release. So you're a little bit of pan spray if you have an older pan. If you have a really new pan like I'm using, then I'm not worried about it at all. The other thing too is to let it fully cool before you even attempt to take these out, because the dough is so crumbly that it's got to be 100% cool before you even attempt to remove them from the shell. So here we go. We're going to whip some egg whites. And again, like Joan was saying, metal on metal, I do not like very much. And so even stirring in a pan or anything else, I try to use a wooden spoon. A whisk is a little hard. You can't really, there are silicone whisks and other things like that, so I'd recommend that. What I'm gonna try to do, and what I usually try to do, is I try to get the eggs broken up and a little bit of peak to them, and then just whisk without hitting the bowl very much. And so it actually, hitting the bowl it's kinetic energy, it stops it. So if you can continue a swirl or a figure eight, you'll actually use a much more efficient energy, and you'll be able to get a little bit lighter, and you can also not hit the sides as much and maintain that kind of less metal to metal contact. So I'm gonna start here. And then like I said, once I get it going, the idea is to not touch the sides of the bowl very much.
Just have to adjust
Try to angle it that way, but my wrist doesn't angle it. And another little trick that I've been doing with the egg whites because if you've ever whipped egg whites, a lot of times you add cream of tartar, which cream of tartar is pure acid. It's actually, most cream of tartar is the acid from wine barrels that are scraped out. And so if you have a jar of cream of tartar or a container of cream of tartar and you've ever looked at it and there's a wine barrel on it, the reason because that's the way that typically we used to get cream of tartar, was literally just the acidic buildup on old wine barrels. So I remember the winery I worked at, Ciego Vine Garden up in Lake County, Javier, our winemaker, he told me that all of his salt growing up in Chile was purple because it all came out of the wine barrels and they scraped it for their salt. And so his table salt and his family growing up, because his grandfather was winemakers generations. And so it's interesting to find out where a lot of this stuff came from. Soy sauce, other things, complete byproducts that from a different process that are never wasted. So
That's awesome.
So here we are. We're at a decent peak with our whites. Now, just a little bit of a soft peak. It doesn't have to be a complete firm peak. But actually what I was doing here earlier was I add a splash of the apple cider vinegar after it's been beaten a little bit. And then this acidity will actually help keep
So
peaks.
Would you do that instead of having cream of tartar then?
Yeah, because I don't actually, there is no cream of tartar or anything in this recipe because the recipe doesn't actually, the original recipe doesn't have you separate the two. I separate it and I just added, this is 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar that goes in the filling. Well, I use just a small, probably like about a half a tablespoon into this egg white. And so again, I added that to somewhat of a soft peak egg white. Well, now it's going to hold up when I combine that into the other, into the filling. So we go back over here to our eggs. Then I'm going to add our brown sugar, currants, vinegar, vanilla, and then room temperature softened butter. And again, what I'm going to do with this is with my spatula, I'm just going to combine it until I've got kind of a creamy paste. So we're going to start out very thick and look like a filling or a paste or something else that is very thick. And so I'm going to keep working this until we have a little bit more fluidity, and it's again, so if you're making cookies and you picture, flour, butter, and milk, or and sugar, and you're trying to combine those and create that kind of creaminess for the cookies, it's the same kind of thing. I'm going to work it until it's all combined, and that again, you see how there's the color is actually somewhat dark. So I'm going to work this until we take it down at least 2 shades and so a little bit more of a tan.
Does it become like a translucent a little bit?
A little bit. More like it's going to, this is kind of a, wood colored. It's going to kind of lighten up into a tan. So.
Okay. For those of you who have been watching lately, you can notice the background looks a little bit different. We have been removing all of the equipment in the kitchen piece by piece and cleaning, because when we reopen, we want it to be safety first, and we're able to use this as an opportunity to do a lot of deep cleaning and repair and maintenance to the equipment. So
I talked to one of my sous chefs the other day, and I told her that I feel like I have a lot of goals for this place, and it was going to take me 5+ years to get there, and all the changes I want to do to improve it. This has given us the opportunity to deep clean like I probably could never have been able to.
Yeah.
And so to actually shut down the business and get here, all of our stoves, ovens, fryers, we put them outside and pressure washed them. Everything is coming back into a spotless, brand new environment. Most places do not get that opportunity, so we're actually quite fortunate in that way.
yeah.
So here we go. We got our, we have our mix again. So instead of being somewhat kind of a dark color, it definitely creamed up and lightened up. So more of a tan. So you'll be able to notice that.
That's great. That's neat. It's a very good sign that it's ready.
Yep, exactly. So here we are again. I got our egg whites, just freshen those up a little bit. And I'm going to pour these in. And I'm going to fold these in as well to do it as light as possible so that we maintain these air bubbles. And you'll see that again, once this folding goes on with the egg, with the whites in there, the color will turn a lot lighter and become a lot more liquid and runny. Again, very simple, very quick, you know, decent amount of work to press the dough into the pan. That's really the most difficult part.
Could you do that the day before or the night before and press into the pan and let it sit? Or if letting it sit will, that's
no,
good?
the idea is that it's a short dough. You don't work it very much and letting it sit for a very long time. You can take this dough, refrigerate it, take it out the next day or two, let it come to temperature so that you can press it into the pans. But if you were to say to press it in the pan, you could, I've taken this, pressed into a pan, taken this whole thing and thrown it into a freezer. Pulled it out later, scooped this into it, and then baked it, and it, you know, fresh as day. So it's a, you know, there are techniques, either that or bake it off fully, but I can guarantee you it's not gonna be the same as fresh baked out of the oven at bringing it out of the freezer. So there it is. So here we go. And again, we kind of have a little bit lighter color texture to all this, and then we're going to fill our little tart shells. I try to build the tart shell a little bit up over the side, and then when I put the filling in, I go right up to as high as it can go. Even if it spills over a little bit, it's not bad. It may stick, it may make the tart stick into the pan a little bit, but it will, once it's cooled, what drips down the side and goes into the pan will be like caramel. It'll come off and just fall right off. It's something you're gonna wanna eat and you're gonna want. And so it's not, the worst thing is to not get it on the sides. I mean, it's great that burnt that crispy side of it. So again, here we are. This is a full to the top little tart shells. And then now we're gonna do a little bit of cooking show magic.
That's my favorite part. So are you gonna take the rest home and bake it for your wife? She'll be so happy.
I normally would, but my wife doesn't like currants or raisins very much.
Uh-oh.
So, but she is, she's very sweet and wonderful, and she'll probably try one of these for me. But here we have fried out of the oven. Obviously not out of the oven, otherwise I wouldn't be able to touch them because they'd be too hot. But here we are. These I baked off just before the show, about an hour early.
Yeah, I need to try one. Joan, don't apologize. We love that you're asking questions.
Absolutely, ask more, as much as you want.
She's asking, do we use salted or unsalted butter?
I usually use unsalted just because that's what we have and that's what we bake with. But in this recipe, you can kind of go back and forth. There is a little, you know, it's cream cheese. So cream cheese has a little bit of salt in it, and it also has a little bit of sweetness, not necessarily added sugar, but sweetness from the cream. So that's one of the reasons why to use cream cheese. But salted or unsalted butter, a little bit of saltiness on this dough is not gonna be a bad thing. We use unsalted butter because it's better for baking. At home, traditionally, I usually have salted butter because I can leave it out in room temperature for much longer. So. All right, here are our little butter tarts.
Oh, I love that. You can see the coating on the top.
Yep, the crust, you get that nice brown kind of chewy crust. This as well, it sinks in a little bit. After it's baked, it'll sink down a little bit. But yeah, these are the traditional butter tarts that, you know, hopefully some of my high school friends will remember. So yeah, we will post this online. We'll post this recipe online, and I hope you enjoy. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will get around to checking everybody's questions and answering everything off of these last two videos. So,
all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody for watching. I'm gonna try to tilt it back over my way without flipping the whole gimbal. So thanks again for watching today. We really do love all of your support and your love, and we're so excited that you have tuned in and have made this part of your day. And next week we'll have our fireside chat on Wednesday at 3 o'clock, and Dev and I are hoping to talk a little bit more about reopening and what that looks like, and how it is safety first all the way. Oh, Marianne is just asking, what is the size of our pans again?
So these are, I believe, I would have to double check, but I believe that this is a, on the top, we're talking about 2 inches down to 1.5 inches base and that kind of angle. I've made bigger ones. These are a little bit tall. I really like them being tall like this. Other ways that we usually buy when we go to Canada is in wider, flatter. And so you can buy little aluminum tins. They work really well. This has just always been the pan that I've kind of traditionally done it in, this style of tart shell. So 2-inch diameter top and about 1.5 inches base.
All right. Great question. Good questions. We love questions. Thank you guys all again for joining us, and we will see you next Wednesday at 3 for our fireside chat. And your mom said you need to save one for her.
Oh, absolutely.
Well done. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for
you,
joining
everyone.
us. Bye.